Okay, I'll let you into a little secret. I do a lot of driving, and to be honest, I really don't like it. I'm off to a gig. It's Saturday. I'm playing in Canterbury, which for me is a 3.5 hour journey, which I don't really like doing. It basically just means I'm on one road for 3.5 hours, and it's not very fun. Just when you're sat just on a motorway, it gets me so bored, and I hate being bored. I hate the idea of me being bored. So a few of the little tactics that I've used to help combat this. Podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts now. It's quite a recent thing over the last sort of 6 months or so. I've been really getting into that. Obviously music, I've been listening to all sorts of things, and I try to really listen, so like active listening to it. So I very often sing along. It sounds ridiculous, but I sing along. I don't listen to a lot of vocal music actually, but it's a lot of instrumental, but I still sing along. I sort of tap along, the sort of things that I think most people do, but with a little bit more analysis going on. So I try to get something out of the journey where I'm trapped in this metal box for however many hours it is. I try and do something that's going to be beneficial. Trying to work out the beats, trying to work out the intervals, maybe trying to work out the harmony. I've done a lesson on my site before about sort of active listening in the car, where I've just sort of gone through a track that I was trying to transcribe, and try and work out the harmony as you go. Obviously you don't know the pitch specifically, you don't know what key it's in, but you do know the relative distance between the harmonies, and you can kind of train your ear to recognize these things, and it's quite useful. So when you do go to transcribe it, it's pretty much all there. You've got this kind of the shape of it. All you do need to do is then put the actual names of the chords down. The other tactic I've got is I'm really lucky because I got a new car last year, which I desperately needed because I'm doing so many more miles now, and it's got cruise control, and that is just it's such a pleasure to just take your feet off and just like sit properly, rather than getting that horrible warm ankle feeling. The other thing is driving really fast or really slow on the motorway. I find that's the best tactic. A lot of people do this sort of in the middle thing, both in terms of just sitting in the middle lane and doing like an average speed, which means you just have to either just be one of those people who sits in the middle lane, which is just annoying, or you have to keep overtaking everyone, and just you have to do stuff all the time. And so if you're in the outside lane doing whatever stupid miles an hour you can get away with, then very often it's easy, you can just fly past everyone. Or if you just sit like I am now, doing a reasonably slow speed, then again, you don't have to overtake anyone, it's just easy. Other tactics, I eat a lot when I'm bored, so I've got chewing gum at the moment, just so that I'm actually not eating, I'm just chewing one thing, but because I can do the whole service station, spend a fortune, eat a lot of crisps and sweets and everything, I try and prepare myself with stuff that is a little bit more nutritious. So I've got some dried fruit here, and I do cashew nuts as well. Of course there's the talking to yourself thing, or in this case, talking to my phone. Well, talking to you guys. I also got this tip from a really good friend of mine. We used to travel together a lot on gigs, and he always has one of these in the car. So this is a wrist exerciser. Sorry, a forearm extender. So you do this. For some reason I bought the extra strong one thinking that would be a good idea. It's really hard. So we used to play a game of how many you could do in a minute, and for some reason I still play that game in the car just to get over the tedium of going in a straight line for so long.
Nothing's gonna break you fall. Nothing's gonna break you fall.
So because I want to make this journey slightly productive, I thought I'd shoot this video. I've been thinking about quite a few things recently, and a lot of the blog and the last video that I did was talking about practice. Basically I'm sort of encouraging you to practice, which is also encouraging me to practice. You know, the whole practice thing has been a real kind of, what do they call it, an albatross? Yeah. Anyway, a monkey on my back, you know, for a long time. I feel like I've wasted many years of just not knowing what to do, and just not ever getting started properly, and just pissing around with stuff. So now I feel a little bit more, I've got kind of a fire in my belly of just I have a much better idea of what I'm doing, and I feel like I'm getting somewhere, which is good. But I was just thinking about, you know, everyone practicing. I think everyone practicing is a very good idea. And some of the things I guess I've been encouraging have been to do with the volume of practice, which is obviously a huge part of it, and something I've been trying to do myself. It's a very difficult thing when, well, if you say it's difficult, of course it will be difficult, but everyone has a life, you know. It's unless you're dedicating, somebody's going slower than me, I'm gonna have to overtake. Unless you've got a life dedicated to just one single passion, and you do that thing 24 hours a day, you know, it's not really, it's going to be tricky to try and find that time. You know, we all have to do jobs and families and friends, and, you know, paying bills and the whole thing. So getting that time is very difficult for most people. And I guess in my last blog I was talking about how I was doing it, which is just snatching sort of a minimum of 25 minutes, and that sort of number, 25 minutes, you know, not half an hour, but 25 minutes, it kind of, not only is it a really good focus, amount of time for focusing, but also I just feel like it's incredibly doable, you know. So I can get that done and sort of dedicate the time to it, and doing it every day with that sort of Seinfeld method of checking off each day on the calendar. It's just sort of getting my mind into that sort of idea of getting the work done. But it made me think about a teacher I once had, who kind of recommended that two things that I thought were really interesting. One of them was I agree with, one of them I really don't agree with. The first thing that I don't agree with, and this is to do with volume of practice, is he used to say that he used to watch, for some reason he used to watch EastEnders, and he would practice saxophone whilst watching EastEnders, but not actually playing anything, just going up and down scales on the saxophone with his fingers just whilst he's watching the telly. And at the time I thought, yeah, that's a cool idea, you know, you're sort of getting the work done. But now I totally disagree with that. I think the idea of just getting into this sort of automatic pilot method is not really very beneficial. And some of the things I've been studying recently, quite a famous one is the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours, where he was suggesting that in order to master a specific skill, studies have shown that 10,000 hours is kind of like the magic number that you have to get to, and it sort of implies that if you practice something for 10,000 hours, then you will be very, very good at it. He doesn't completely sort of say that, but it's kind of what's implied, and many people have disagreed with that idea. There is something to be said for volume, of course, but there's another guy, I think he's a Swedish guy, I think he's Anderson or something like that. Anyway, he suggests that you should have a sort of, I can't remember his term, but it's sort of an active practice, so that like a dedicated kind of awareness when you practice. And this is something that I completely agree with, that you should try to set out your goals for the practice session and focus on something very, very specific and be completely aware of it as you're doing it. You will gain far more skills that way, rather than the sort of mechanical sort of autonomy of it. You can be much more aware of the process and the analysis as you're doing it, and the direction that it's taking you in, and it will take you into a new direction, and it will just constantly evolve, and you're just on it all the time. So this is something I really try and do, regardless of what I'm actually practicing. I'm really actively engaged in what I'm doing. I've also mentioned that with the sort of mindfulness approach. It's like, you know, if you're going to spend 25 minutes on a practice, it's doable first of all, rather than, let's say, 4 hours. But also, if you kind of are focused and you're mindful during that time, then you're going to get the most out of it. And for me, that's what it's all about. You know, I don't want to be spending 4 hours out of my day doing something which is pointless. You know, I want to go in, get it done, and then go on and, you know, have tea with my family, and, you know, go out and do some other stuff, and, you know, spend the evening in with my wife, and go to a rehearsal, or, you know, play gigs, and, you know, it's just life. Hitting the cashew nuts in a big way. So there's something about sort of getting stuff done, you know, putting in that work, but also you've got to be really aware of what you're doing as you're doing it. Going back to this teacher, the other thing that he said that I actually quite agree with is doing something which is really, really hard. He said that he would practice stuff like giant steps, you know, and, you know, just the most ridiculously hard things he could think of in his practice session. And then when it came to the gigs, the performance, and he ended up playing Watermelon Man, or, you know, something, just a blues that was dead easy. It's like he's got that sort of, obviously he wouldn't be playing the stuff from Giant Step, well, you might do, but it seems easier, you know, the easy stuff seems easier because you're working on the hard stuff. But also, this is the thing that he didn't say, and I'm kind of following up with, is that in order for you to improve, I really think it's necessary that you actually push yourself into an area which is difficult and uncomfortable. And exactly the same thing for you know, sort of health and fitness. If you just jog along the street and you're not pushing yourself, nothing really is going to happen. You know, But if you try and raise your heartbeat to a certain level, then your body will go, shit, I've got to cope with this. Maybe this is going to happen to me again. I don't like it. I will have to rethink, rebuild even how the body works in order for me to cope with that. So if you're constantly just playing the same tunes because you think that the next door's listening and you want to impress them, then you're not really pushing yourself, and you're not really going to improve. So if you spend 10,000 hours doing the same old shit, then you're not gonna get better. Similarly, you have to kind of check in all the time. So you have to know if you're doing things right, because practice makes perfect, but also practice makes permanent. And if you do something which is very repetitive, then you'll end up being very good at it, and unfortunately that one thing could be completely crap. So I think at an early stage, I think it's very important that you get hold of a teacher, a good teacher that can show you the way. And then once you're there, you can kind of do things on your own, and maybe just have 1 or 2 lessons, a month or a year, maybe, just kind of top up your knowledge and just kind of get you on, give you a little bit of motivation, maybe just to push you on to the next thing. But having a teacher right at the beginning is important, and I would highly recommend that. Okay, good morning. It's Sunday morning, it's really early. I'm back on the road again for this epic journey. I've got to go all the way back, pretty much to home, but stop off on the way to have a photo shoot. Rock and roll, eh? The gig last night was fairly terrible. We had a lot of issues with sound. Just one of those nights that just didn't really work very well, and that's just how it is. But yeah, I will see you on another video. I'm going to sign off.